Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I pray that everyone is having a blessed Ramadan and that we are taking advantage of these precious moments that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us. So inshallah, let's get right to it. So today's juz summary is juz number 7. So in this juz you will find that Allah draws man's attention to the fact that the person who forbids something that Allah has permitted, so that person will be guilty of following his carnal desires, his nafs, instead of Allah's injunctions. An example of this is the concept of monasticism that the Christians, they devised. And what they would do is that they would totally forsake the world and they would forbid themselves the halal pleasures. And this concept is completely incorrect and impermissible, because this is not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not telling us that go in the masjid, sit in the masjid, do dhikr of Allah the entire day, don't go out, don't make a living, don't take care of your families. I mean, this is impractical. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that we need to go, we need to take care of our families, we need to take care of ourselves, and don't be like the Christians. وَرَهْبَانِيَّةً ابْتَدَعُوهَا مَا كَتَبْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in the Qura'n, that we didn't prescribe rahbaniyah, monasticism, upon the people. This is something that people themselves have concocted. So the Christians, they were guilty of this. Continuing on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds the mu'mineen that they will be taken to task for every oath that they fail to fulfill. The kafara, the atonement for breaching such a promise, is that a person should either feed 10 poor people, clothe them, set a slave free, or fast for 3 days. Obviously, setting slaves free, that doesn't exist today, so one can adhere to the others. So that would mean that feeding 10 poor people, clothing them, and fasting for 3 days. Allah also urges Muslims not to take intoxicants, not to gamble, and not to divine the future. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares these acts to be haram, temptations of shaitan. Surah Ma'idah, it mentions how Allah will question every prophet about his nation. They will declare that they only did as they were told, and that Allah alone knows the reality of all hidden matters. Surah Ma'idah also makes mention of the penalty due for hunting an animal while in the state of ihram. And of course, every such situation has its own unique set of circumstances, which will obviously necessitate a unique ruling. And these matters, it should be referred to ulama, scholars, muftis, who will be able to tell you that this is the penalty for doing such and such thing while in the state of ihram. Continuing on the day of Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remind Isa alayhi salam about his miraculous birth, about the various miracles that Allah allowed him to perform, and about the favors that Allah bestowed on him and his mother, Hazrat Maryam alayhi salam. Allah will then ask him that, "O Isa, son of Maryam, did you tell the people that take myself and my mother both as deities instead of Allah?" So Hazrat Isa alayhi salam will deny that he never encouraged this, and he will attest, he will say, and this is in Surah Ma'idah, verse number 116, 117, and 118, that you know what is in my heart. I only told them what you had commanded me with, i.e., worship of Allah, who is my Rabb and your Rabb. If you wish, then verily they are your slaves, that if you punish them, then verily they are your slaves, and if you pardon them, then surely you are mighty and you are wise. And this is how it is with all of the prophets. They can only convey that much with which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told them to convey. They can't do more, they can't do less. So whatever Allah instructed them with, they have to follow that to the letter. They have to adhere to that. And throughout the Qur'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that this is what you need to tell the people, and you cannot transgress these boundaries, otherwise you will be held accountable. So whatever the prophets, they have been told to convey by Allah, they have to follow that, they have to adhere to that. Now, Surah An'am, it commences after Surah Ma'idah. Allah mentions that it has always been the practice of the kuffar to ridicule the anbiya, to call them wizards, This was a common occurrence, and the people, they would undermine the message of the Anbiya by saying such things, that they would denigrate them, they would call them names, they would call them wizards. The Prophet ﷺ was called a wizard, a soothsayer. He was called many things just to undermine the message that he was conveying to the people of Makkah. However, the fact of the matter is that Allah's deen will always conquer and rise. This is the way of deen, and this is the way of truth. That truth, it always shines, and it is distinct from falsehood. So the fact is that Allah's deen will always conquer and rise, while the kuffar will suffer a terrible doom for their falsehood. Now, in Surah An'am, it's also mentioned that Allah provides sustenance to people and doesn't require any reward from them. And other gods that people worship, they can't provide sustenance for their devotees, but rather require sustenance from them. And this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling people to reflect that why are you associating partners with Allah Azza wa Jal when Allah alone is the one who sustains? And these gods that you have created, these gods that you have concocted, they can't do any of these things. Continuing on, Allah exhorts Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam not to be distressed about the aversion of the kuffar, but to be patient, because Allah will definitely assist him. The surah makes it clear that none will be required to account for the deeds of another on the day of Qiyamah. Each and every single person, all of us, we have to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our own deeds. When we are presented before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of Qiyamah, we're going to be in front of Allah with our own a'mal, with our own deeds and misdeeds, whatever they may be. So it isn't as if someone's father or mother or family members are going to stand behind them. A person has to stand before Allah in the court of Allah with his own deeds, with his own misdeeds. Continuing on, every person is going to be held accountable for his or her own deeds. And when the non-Muslim will come to learn what their plight shall be, then again, it's whatever they present to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is how they are going to be judged. On that day, on the day of Qiyamah, all kingdom will belong solely to Allah, and none shall have any say in any matter. I mean, in this world we have a semblance of free will, but on the day of Qiyamah, that's not going to be the case. On the day of Qiyamah, dominion and control will belong exclusively to Allah Azza wa Jal. On the day of Qiyamah, it isn't as if we're going to be able to speak anyway. Throughout the Qur'an, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention that our hands will bear witness, our body parts will bear witness against us. So on that day, complete dominion will belong solely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it isn't as if we're going to have any kind of free will on the day of Qiyamah, similar to what we have now. Continuing with the surah, after describing how Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam recognized Allah as his true deity, Allah tells the Quraysh that Allah tells the Quraysh of Makkah that his people denied him, just as the Quraysh, they denied the message of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Quraysh of Makkah that the people of Ibrahim alayhi salam, they also denied him, just as you, the Quraysh, are denying the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's message. So there isn't any difference between the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Ibrahim alayhi salam, because the Quraysh, they were prideful. They had this pride that Ibrahim alayhi salam is their great ancestor, and a lot of things there were vestiges of the deen of Ibrahim alayhi salam that the Quraysh, they were practicing, and they were proud of this fact. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is opening their eyes that, look, you're attributing yourself to Ibrahim alayhi salam, but you're just like the people of Ibrahim alayhi salam. You're just like the people of Babylon, that when Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he tried to open their eyes to the message of the divine, the people, they never followed Ibrahim alayhi salam's message. They never stood by him, and they denied him. Not only that, they threw him into the fire, and he had to leave his land. So you're not any different. Although you attribute yourselves to Ibrahim alayhi salam, you are not different than the qawm of Ibrahim alayhi salam, who denied Ibrahim alayhi salam, who never followed Ibrahim alayhi salam. You are just like them. and this is what you're doing with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The conclusion is drawn that from this, the Quraysh also stand to face the same destructive consequences as the people of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Allah also points out that the worst oppressor is the one who lies about Allah and who rebels against Allah's commands. Oppressors, people who are involved in different types of dhulm, they will never be successful, especially in the hereafter, because these people have a huge burden on their shoulders. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold them accountable extremely severe. Their accountability in the court of Allah will be extremely severe on account of them oppressing so many people, so many the makhluk of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this world. Allah has promised that the day of Qiyamah is going to take place. This is going to happen. And Allah advises the mu'mineen never to swear at the gods of others, and because it is possible that they are going to swear and use abusive language against Allah Azza wa Jal. This is a brief summary of the 7th juz. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq and understanding. These are blessed days of Ramadan. We should keep the ummah in our pious du'as, and we should avail this opportunity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon each and every single one of us. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.